All right, so today we are going to be talking about how to get consistent book sales. And this is something that every author wants, every author needs essentially to be able to do all the things. But it's also something that most authors have a hard time with. And so I want to give you some actionable tips as well as work on some of the things you need to do before you even get to the point of even considering having those book sales. And so I'm the owner of self-publishing, and I help authors get from the page to the people with efficient and effective marketing strategies so that you can sell more books, reach more readers, make more money, and change more lives. So let's get into it. All right, so a little bit about me. I am a wife and stay-at-home mom of two, as well as a full-time entrepreneur, and I've done both for about 11 to 12 years. 12 years in business, and then a full-time entrepreneur and stay-at-home mom for 2 years. So all of that into one. I've had a business for 12 years in different fields. And then, as I mentioned, I'm the owner of self-publishing, and I'm also an uncloned marketing pro. So I have a certification in marketing to help authors and business owners in general to be able to come up with really cool and dope and interesting marketing campaigns. And then these are some of the places I've been featured and how I support authors as well. And I'm an author myself. I have 4 books. And so if you haven't already grabbed your copy, I do want to share my newest release, and I'll be referencing it throughout the live today as a point of reference. And so I did want to share a review that I got recently, and this is from Heather over on Instagram. She also actually supports authors to publish their books. She helps them with the writing process. And so I'm not going to read the entire thing, but I'll read some of the snippets and highlights here. So she shared that I'm really enjoying the book so far. This was an audio, so it auto transcribed. So that's what you're kind of seeing there. I got all the way through to chapter 3 yesterday, and she was in a reading mode, and she was just going from chapter to chapter, from book to book to book. And she actually purchased the color copy. And so she also shared how that helped her brain think differently because with the color coding, it helps you to be able to kind of map those things out that way if you're someone who likes that. And she mentioned that she already knew some of the information. However, it really just helped her to further cement her understanding and also introduce new ideas that she hadn't done before. And so, as I mentioned, she supports authors, and so she's familiar with the consultancy and agency side of things. And so it was just really cool to see her feedback. And then over on this side, she mentioned some of the evidence that was in the book. I do include case studies of my clients and my own books to be able to help you understand the pre-order process because it focuses on pre-orders and how to cover your costs for your publishing, because it's a beautiful thing when you can be profitable right from the start. So if you haven't grabbed your copy, click the link in the description of this video, or if you're watching on your TV or another device, and you can scan the QR code there, or visit profitableselfpublishing.com. All right, now, when it comes to focusing on how to get those continuous sales, one thing I've noticed when working with different authors, self-published independent authors, is that there is a consistent trend of focusing on the wrong things. And so we're going to talk about those. And I have 3 things to kind of shift from, and then I'll talk to you about things to shift towards. So, and I have notes because I want to stay on track. And so one thing that I find is that most authors are focused on a few aspects that are not really actually helping them get to where they want to go. And I say authors, I'm an author as well, but I focus on these things. And so this is to help you to get there as well. And so most authors focus on book sales and page reads. Now, that might sound kind of wild at first if you're thinking, well, obviously I need to know how many books I've sold, and it's good to track your page reads. That is true. However, if that is your sole focus and that's the only thing that you're prioritizing, if you're checking your KDP dashboard 11 times a day, if you are obsessing over your page read count, and I'll talk about that in a second because that's one of the sticky points that I actually mentioned in the book about how I don't focus on that. And if those are the 2 things that you're focusing on solely, then it's going to be hard for you to actually reach your goals because you're spending more time focusing on the outcome versus the income. And so there's this I don't know how I would describe her. There's another entrepreneur that I follow. She focused on corporate contracts. Her name's Ashley Kirkwood. And she has said before that she focuses on the input and not the output. So like she knows if she does the work, she puts the steps in, she gets the reps in, then that will get the results that she wants to see. And she's also a believer as well, a believer in Christ. And so she also mentions like, okay, there's opportunities for God to multiply what it is that you're doing. But in the same token, like, you can't be so focused on the results that you're not focusing on the way in which you got those results and the way in which you want to get there. So, and I'll explain what that means. When I say that, if you're just focusing on book sales, then you're not really taking into account the profit that's behind those book sales. You're not taking into account the reviews. You're not looking at the impact that you're having on readers. There are some things where, yes, it's great for someone to read the book or someone to buy the book or gift the book, but is your book actually being read? Are people actually taking the time to read your book? Because yes, they bought it, but are they actually reading it? Because if they're not reading it, then you're not going to get the reviews, and then that's going to tank your sales. Or are they actually being impacted by it? So, okay, first you got to get them to buy it, then get them to leave a review, and not necessarily in this order, I should say, getting them to leave a review, but are they actually getting the results that you want them to see? If it's a book such as mine, where I support authors to be able to publish profitably so that they can use those pre-orders to cover their cost and also to build authority and to build their brand from their pre-sales, are people actually getting that result? So are you doing something to actually track and see how people are consuming the book or how they are actually implementing the strategies? For example, if you are a self-help author and you have like a system that you want people to use to be able to lose weight. For example, I'm trying to lose some baby weight. So if I am looking for a book or whatever that's on that, you as the author would want some kind of way to track that, to make sure that people are actually doing the steps. Because if they're doing the steps, then they're going to be more likely to get the results. And then they're also going to be more likely to tell other people about the results that happen from your book. And so that's so important and so key to think beyond just the book sales. Book sales are great, but really think about and see how you can track those metrics of how are people being impacted by the book? How are they being changed by the book? How is my book helping them to be able to get whatever transformation they're looking for? Those things are important. And then also, as authors, we know that if you're just tracking your book sales in KDP, then you also are typically not necessarily focusing on profit. And I say that because if your main focus is selling books on Amazon, then they're taking a large percentage of your book royalties. And that could be argued whether it's justifiable, and we'll get to that in a bit. But if you are only focusing on selling on that one platform, you're also putting yourself in a bit of danger and a bit of a risk in terms of whether or not they're going to shut down your account or giving away that much of your income to someone else, when in actuality, there are other ways that you can position your book and other platforms you can sell your book on that put more money back in your pocket. And so with that, if you're going to have that, for example, for continuous sales, yes, it's nice to have continuous sales on Amazon, but you also want to consider the trade-off of that. So if you're focusing on selling on Amazon, are you getting the profit that you want to see? Are you positioning your book so that you can get speaking gigs so that way you can sell in higher numbers? So that way you're not worried that, oh, you're only getting $1, $2, $3, whatever the case may be for that individual book because you're selling hundreds of copies of books. Another way to drive traffic to your page, things like that. And then also, if you're focusing on page reads, and this is gonna, I'm sure there'll be a section of the author community that will have a bone to pick with me about it. But page reads are not necessarily going to be the best way for you to get those consistent sales. And I say that because it goes back to profit. So for your page reads, typically, and I'm referencing Amazon Kindle. So if you're in Kindle Unlimited, you're getting about 0.004 cents per page. And so I did the math on my book and most recent book. It's about 226 pages with all the charts and graphs and stuff. And that would be 90 cents per book. So if someone were to read my book, even though it's not in Kindle Unlimited right now, but let's say it was, read the book cover to cover and actually finish it, then I would get 90 cents per book. Now, that's cool. However, 90 cents per book is not really something that's going to motivate me to be able to continuously send people to Kindle Unlimited to purchase the book. Now, I know that might be a different factor for other people, but I'm thinking, okay, I would rather make a certain amount of money for my book in order to keep keep that motivation, because as authors and as artists, there's this perception that, okay, you have to be a starving artist. I don't believe in that. I don't subscribe to that. My author clients don't do that. And so instead of putting it in Kindle Unlimited, I sell the ebook version on my site currently. Not saying I won't ever put it in Kindle Unlimited, but right now it's on my site. And so, for example, I got a sale the other day, and it sold for $14.99 for one copy. And so even with that one purchase, making 90 cents versus $14.99, that gives me a lot more wiggle room to be able to do other things. So instead of having to scrounge for that 90 cents I'd be getting per book, if somebody reads it, because it depends on whether or not they actually read the book and actually finish the book for me to get that amount, I'm able to say, okay, well, all right, that's $15 I can use for something else. I can use it to put towards ads if I wanted to, or I could use it to put towards paying my virtual assistant or something. It just gives me a lot more flexibility than if I was just focused on sitting folks to my Kindle Unlimited. Now, do with that what you will. There are some authors who, if your book is like a 300, 400 page book, or you live in a place where shipping is ridiculous, and even in that case, if you're doing an ebook, shipping's not really a factor. There are reasons why you might want to put your book in Kindle Unlimited, and that's another video for another day. But say all that to say that if you're using those metrics, or if you're using those measures, so let's say you're looking at your KDP dashboard, you're looking at your Kindle Unlimited dashboard, or section of the dashboard. If that's your focus, then that's really the wrong thing that you want to focus on if you're thinking about consistent sales, because it takes money to make money, and it takes money and effort to be able to get to where you want to go as an author. Let's say your goal is to sell 500 books your first year, or 1,000 books your first year, or your goal is to replace your 9-to-5 income. You need profit behind that. And so focusing on those two things are not necessarily going to get you there as quickly as it would with some of the other measures I'm going to share. And then also with Amazon, we all know the Amazon algorithm does kind of what it wants, but with that, there is an inclination for Amazon to be more likely to recommend your book if you're getting consistent sales, as opposed to a big influx with your launch and then kind of trickling off. And so that's another thing to consider when you're looking at these 1 or 3 to 5 day Amazon deals that you might do, or am I dropping my book to 99 cents, or I'm making my book free in hopes of getting those reviews. You want to be mindful of that, because it's not something that's necessarily going to spike Amazon's internal recommendation for your book. It can also actually make it seem like, okay, this person isn't actually selling consistently. They're just got this big influx, and then now nobody's buying the book. And then also, those influxes don't always equal reviews. And so if you need some ideas of how to get more reviews, I have actually a playlist for that. So check the link in the description for this video if you're watching on YouTube. And then that way you can see different ways to get additional reviews, because sometimes those free downloads don't always result in that. And then I forgot to mention earlier, as I'm talking, if you have questions, drop them in the chat, and then I'll come back and answer them for you. And so back to with our first point, focusing on the wrong metrics. So focusing on page reads, focusing on books sold, and then also focusing on bestseller status is another thing that many authors do. And I understand, and when I say authors, I mean independent, self-published, and also actually some indies focus on this too, for different reasons. And so when I say that, focusing on bestseller status, there's a tendency to think that, okay, once I reach bestseller status, then I have made it, or I have sold a bazillion books, or this is going to be the thing that makes me a bunch of money. And that's not always the case. Bestseller status varies by the hour, so it changes hourly, at least on Amazon, if that's what you're hoping for. It changes hourly on Amazon, and it varies by the category. So you could be in a category that doesn't have that many other books in there, and so the competition is a lot less. Or you could be in a category that has a ton of other books, and you still could be ranking like top 100 or top 1,000 or whatever the case may be. And that could be more impressive, and that could mean more sales than actually ranking number 1 in a category. It really just depends. And so there's not a universal metric that you can use to show and say, okay, bestseller status equals this number of sales. There are some calculators out there, and there's some software that can help you to kind of get closer to that number. But just focusing on it as a universal measure of like, oh, okay, I've made it. I'm successful. Woo, okay. That's not something that's going to get you the continuous results that you want to see, because it changes all the time. And I understand that there's a tendency to want to really focus on that. from the world of traditionally published authors, but bestseller status for traditionally published authors is a different type of metric than it is for indie authors, self-published authors who are looking at different platforms such as Amazon KDP for that measurement. And so one thing I want to encourage you to do is to diversify your sales outlets. And so don't just focus on selling on Amazon KDP. Consider other platforms where you might sell, such as TikTok, such as the different stores that are the different stores that Ingram Spark distributes to. And I have videos about those as well. Actually, I have one that shows the different platforms that I sell my books on for my food business. And doing that helps you to get more eyes on your books. It also helps you to be able to have more than one stream of income without having to change what it is that you're doing. Often we hear, oh, okay, you need to have 5 to 7, 9, however many streams of income. That doesn't necessarily mean that you need to be doing 5 to 9 different things or 5 to 9 different businesses. Absolutely not. If that's not where you are, it means that you want to diversify the ways in which your money is coming in. And so creating streams that have different platforms that you're offering, or even different ways that you're selling your book. For example, let's say you're doing speaking gigs, or let's say you're getting bulk book orders. I have some classes on that if you need support with bulk book orders. And that just means selling your books to like an organization or a school in mass instead of trying to sell to one individual. Doing those things are going to give you an option, or going to give you more options than just focusing on that one platform. So I know I'm kind of hammering this home, but this is a big point because you don't want to feel like, okay, well, my Amazon sales dropped, so now I'm not making any money. You want to have different ways that your readers can reach you. And this is actually something I talk about in chapter 3 of my book, of what exactly it is that you should focus on and how you can align that with your goals. Because typically what I find when I'm working with authors is that they think they're focusing on something that helps them reach their goals, but in actuality, it's something else. All right, so the second thing is focusing on the wrong timeline. And so with this, and hold on just a moment, looks like my slides didn't change. Okay, wasn't working. I had to get it together. Okay. All right, the next thing is focusing on the wrong timeline. And so typically, once again, working with authors, I coach authors and do consulting as well with self-published indie authors. The sentiments that I hear is that, oh, okay, if I can just get my book finished, or if I can just finish writing it, or if I can just, like, once my book is done, then I'll like move on to the next book. And it's a sentiment of like, okay, I'm done with this book. I'm not going to be doing anything else with it. And that's not the way to get consistent sales. You're not going to get continuous sales unless you have made sure that your book has a proper launch and making sure that it has proper support in order to be able to get there. And I equate it to thinking about kids. I have 2. My youngest just turned 2. And I think about, okay, so you like raise this child from birth, and well, even before then, pregnancy. And I had a high risk pregnancy, and praise God, he's fine and I was fine. But you go through this process to bring this baby to life, and your book is the baby, and then it's born. And then if you're like, okay, I'm not doing any further promotion for it, I'm not going to do marketing for it, just day of release, buy my book, here it is, boom. And then by the end of the week, you stop talking about it. I equate that to you had your kid and then you just are like, okay, go ahead and go to school or go ahead and move out. And you start assuming that your child is self-sufficient at that age. And human babies are some of the most helpless babies and mammals out of like the animal kingdom. And your book is the same way. Your book is brand new. You may have had a really wonderful launch, but your promotion doesn't stop there. It's not something that is just like, okay, you're good, you're ready to fly. You are going to have to do things in the post-launch period and the period even 6 months to a year after your book is out. And not that it has to be at the same cadence that you did during your launch. I'm not saying that. But what I am saying is dropping your book off and just saying, okay, deuces, good luck. That's not going to result in those continuous sales. You have to find ways in order to bring your reader in, to bring organizations in, to let people know that your book is still alive and kicking, and that it's still doing great things, and that you are tying it into the other things that you have. So be prepared to talk about your book on a consistent basis. I know you might feel like, oh, I've told everybody should know about this book because I've talked about it so much. And that's just not the case, because especially if you're using social media to promote, you are not always going to be in front of your ideal audience. You are not always going to have people who have given you their attention. People are not always going to remember. So you want to stay top of mind in a way that's sustainable for you. Obviously, work around your life, but you don't want to think that everybody's heard about your book, because there are 8 billion people in the world. Life is life and stuff goes on. And you have to make sure that if you want consistent sales, because obviously you could write the book and just let it fall off the face of the earth, but you want to have a way for people to remember that you are tied to this book. And that can be kind of challenging if you are releasing multiple books in different genres. And I'm saying that because I have multiple books in different genres, but I've organized them in a way that it's my food business has my mom books and my food books. And then this business has books for authors. And so I am working on a series to continue that process. But even throughout that, I'm still going to reference this book, because this is the book that is going to help people to be able to cover their publishing costs, to build their brand, and then also to pre-sell their book. And so even this piece of content that I'm doing right now, I'm referencing this book. I'm letting people know in a soft way, like, hey, the book is here, it's out, this is what it can help you do. And with that, you might think that, okay, I'm kind of burnt out from doing this. I'm not saying you can't take a break. You can definitely take a break. But don't feel as if you've told so many people about your book that everybody knows about it, because that's just not the case. Because even people who know about it, they forget. They might have their own books they're working on, or they might be doing other things in life. And so understanding that your timeline, your launch is not the end of your book's like lifeline, essentially, is really just the beginning. And so your book is not the end, is the beginning. And then that takes us to the next point of point 3, is thinking that your book is the end. Your book is not the end. Your book is like the gateway to be able to tap into what's next from you and your brand as an author. And maybe your book is a part of a series like mine is, and that's fine. But understand that even if you've moved to the next book in that series, you still are going to want to come back and reference that previous book. And I think about it, even if, whether you're fiction, nonfiction, whatever the case may be, you can still reference that book so that people know, hey, okay, this is the first one in the series. You really need to read that first book to get the foundation for the other books. So for example, for fiction authors, you'd want the reader to read the first book before they read book 2 and 3. And in my case, well, I'll get to that in a future video, but because I structured mine slightly different. But you also want your books to build upon each other. So within Profitable Publishing with Preorders, I put little nuggets about future books that are coming out, and I've included the titles of those future books. And I did that because, one, at some point, once they're out, then there'll be this interconnected situation of, okay, well, if you want to learn about this, go check that book out. If you want to learn about this, go check that book out. And I understand that this is like a launch pad to the next thing. And so your book could be something that helps people to stop overeating, or your book could be something that helps people to launch their business. And so whatever that is, you want to remember that your book is the starting point. It's not the finish point. It's not the finish line. And that could look like using your book to host workshops or trainings. So, for example, a couple years ago, I worked with the author Erica, and hers was a guided journal for moms of kids with special needs. And so when we worked together during coaching, we developed a workshop for her to actually host with moms to come to use the book as a guide during the workshop to actually complete her framework or her process. And so with that, of course, the book is the foundation of that because she structured it around her book. But if she hadn't had the book already, or if she hadn't had the book in production or in the works, then it would have been something that was not as strong of a foundation for the readers, the participants to come. Of course, she could still have done that. However, now it's an extension of her book, and now it's an additional stream of income, like we talked about earlier, for her to be able to use on her journey as an author. So let's say, for example, she charges, I'll just use let's say $30. Let's say she charges $30 for the workshop. So, and then let's say her book might be $15. So if she was only focusing on her book sales, let's say she sells 2 copies of the book. We'll just keep it simple. 2 copies of the book. So she's made $30. But if she sells 2 copies of the workshop, then now she's made $60. So she's doubled. And this is just obviously numbers for ballpark. She's doubled what she's done, or she's doubled her income. But now she has something that's an additional asset. And she has something that is actually intangible. And she doesn't have to keep inventory of it. With her workshop, she does include a copy of the book, which makes sense because people need it to be able to do the thing. But she also has double the amount that she's making from that one situation. And so understanding that your book is just the beginning, that you can create things that are outside of your book, but that are auxiliary to your book. And these are something that I mentioned in my book. Throughout, I talk about how to bundle items with your book. And actually chapter 7 talks about how to create what are called irresistible offers that are tied to your book that really support your reader to, one, convince them to get your book early, but also to support them on their journey for whatever the transformation you're wanting them to have or whatever results you want them to get. And so with that, I did want to share one quote from the book. So if you have yours on page 179. Okay. So, and this chapter is talking about, this is chapter 13, and it's talking about becoming a profitable author. And so one section I wanted to share is that most authors write books without focusing on marketing. They say you should wait to start marketing until after you have a copy of your book in hand. Other advice says to build a back catalog of books and wait to get paid after the 3rd or even the 20th book. I don't know about you, but waiting until the 3rd or 20th book to get paid is unrealistic for most people. And so because of that, that's why I am such a big proponent of pre-orders, and that's why I'm such a big proponent of understanding how your book can create additional income for you, because you might not have time to write 3 books in order to make your money back. You might not have time to write 20 books to make your money back. And I'm not just making that up. I've seen online other authors are saying, oh yeah, I'll start seeing results and start seeing my money back after 20 books. 20 books. As a mom of 2, I don't have time to wait for 20 books to get my money back. And then, one other quote I wanted to share is that pre-orders that focus only on book sales prevent profit opportunities. If you want to make money sooner, use your book as a point of leverage instead of the main focus. And so using your book, just like that client I mentioned, Erica, using it as a point of reference to be able to support other things that you are going to sell or invite your readers to participate in is an excellent way in order to extend the life of your book without creating a situation where you're having to crank out books back to back to back. Now, if you want to crank out books back to back to back, that's cool. That's on you. But having other opportunities to make income is always a great idea. And also we'll go back to the main point of creating continuous sales for your books, because as you're introducing new people to your book and you're giving them experiences that deepen their understanding of your frameworks or of your knowledge of whatever the topic is, then they're going to be more likely to be raving fans. They're going to be more likely to recommend your book to other people or recommend that workshop or training and things of that sort. And so I have another client, Christina. She does lots of things, but she had a conference that she hosted, and then now she's going back and writing the book to tie into that conference. And then she also has additional journals and workbooks and planners, but now she's writing her authority book in order to provide a little bit more meat on the bone when it comes to helping those participants, because she's already getting great results from them from the conference. And so adding a book on top of that and adding a book with it helps her to be able to just stand in a stronger point of positioning, and also to be able to just provide an additional resource for people to use outside of the conference, because the conference is just a couple days. But having a point of reference is helpful, because then when she's coaching them throughout the year, she can say, oh yeah, go ahead and check out chapter blah, 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 and actually share a piece of that, of what it is that you're working on. And so it just deepens the level of understanding for her customers as well. All right, so now how to make the switch from focusing on these wrong things to focusing on the things that you need to be focusing on. So these are the solutions, and let me see, hold on. All right, so this is how to make the switch from focusing on the things that you shouldn't to the things that you actually should to get those continuous sales. And so we did the first part to kind of work on your mindset, and now I want to talk about the actual practical application of things that should happen in order for you to be prepared. And I have accompanying YouTube videos for each of these. So to go deeper into those, I will link those in the description of this video as well. All right, so your first step, if you are focusing on Amazon, or if you are thinking, okay, that's going to be my primary platform, even if you sell otherwise, or even if you want a place for people to be able to see how your book kind of moves and operates, then we want to audit your Amazon. And so this is a service I offer, or actually have a video that is called 5 Reasons Why Your Book Is Not Selling on Amazon. And so I will link that, and you'll be able to see how to actually self-audit your Amazon listing. And though there are boycotts, though there are things happening with Amazon, people are moving away from purchasing on there, it still is up there with Google in terms of like a credible source of why people might purchase from there. And so even if you're like, I don't really want to get sales from there, it's still a good idea to make sure your Amazon page is right and tight, because people are still shopping there. And it's also something across the world that's easily accessible. And so auditing your Amazon looks like making sure that there's certain things that are in place. And this can start all the way from your title of your book, which if your book is already published, you won't be able to change that. But making sure that your description is actually written in a way that the algorithm is going to pick up on. So many times when people come to me and say, oh, my book is not selling, I look at their description and I'm like, well, you wrote it in terms of writing it like you would write it, not how Amazon would read it. And so there are certain things that you want to make sure you have in place, like embedding those keywords and categories and actually doing the keyword and category research to make sure, once again, that Amazon is going to read your book listing the way in which that you want it to, because you are wanting to talk to the Amazon algorithm and a regular person at the same time. And so there's a science to that. And so I do have a class on that about waking up to Amazon sales, and I'll link that in the description too. But first place, start with your audit and get that done for each of your books. Then really focusing on finding the right audience. And this is something that I'm going to say with love, and it might ruffle your feathers, but it needs to be said. Or burn your biscuits, whatever. When you are in these author spaces, so let's say you're in Facebook groups, I'll pick on those for a sec. Let's say you're in Facebook groups with other authors and you are wondering like, oh, why can't I promote my book in here? Why can't I like do a post about my book? Because often they have rules that that's not what they allow. And the reason for that is because those people in that group are not there to buy your book. They're there to sell their book. I'm going to say it again. The people in these Facebook groups and these author communities, generally, they are there to sell their book. They're not there to buy your book. And so your audience is likely not in that group, which to some degree it could be. So for example, I'm an author who writes books for other authors. So my audience would be in those groups. However, I don't just go into those groups and just say, buy my book, because they will kick you out regardless. So like, even if your audience is in there, they're still going to not allow you to do that. There's certain ways you can do that in terms of like becoming a moderator or providing value. There's ways to work around that. Not work around, but there's ways to do that respectfully and still follow the group rules, and also work with the group owners. So there's multiple groups that I am a moderator for, and they allow me to post things and they allow me to provide value and sell my products and services because they know in exchange I'm supporting the group. And so there's ways to do that and build a relationship. However, typically what I see in groups and what I hear is that, oh, okay, why can't I post? And you can't post because the people in there do not necessarily want to buy your book. They might buy it out of support, just of like you've made friends from the group, but they're not going to be at large your audience. For example, I won't pick on them, but for example, let's say your book is to help people with gardening and you're trying to sell your gardening book. You want to go to spaces that already have people who are interested in gardening. Find those spaces. Thrive in those spaces. Set up something with your local library. Set up something with, I'm sure there's organizations across the country and across the world that work with kids who want to get into gardening. Focus on those. Don't focus on groups that have other authors, because those other authors are not necessarily into gardening. And this isn't something to say like nobody wants to buy your book. I'm not saying that at all. But I am saying that you need to focus on the right readers, not people who you just think want to read your book. And the reason for that is because once you do that, then you're spending less time trying to convince people, as I was about to say folks and people, trying to convince people who are not interested in the topic or who are also having their own motives of like trying to sell their own stuff. So hopefully that makes sense. Hopefully you understand. You hear my heart on that. I'm not trying to be mean, but those people don't want to buy your book. They want to sell their book. And so stop trying to sell them your book. And this also goes for people who comment on, like authors who comment on other authors' posts with their book links. Please stop doing this. Like, it becomes something where the original poster feels awkward because they're like, well, this is a fellow author and I want to support them. But then they're like, but I don't really want to buy this book because I'm not interested in this topic. Like, and I've had that happen a couple times on Threads, and sometimes not really on Facebook, but a couple times on Threads where people are like, oh, my book's about this. Okay, well, this post is for me. Like, it's not for you. Like, do your own post or go find your people, because your people are not going to be on my post unless the author is saying, hey, I want to help other authors. Go ahead and add your link. Cool, do it. Like, yes, do it. And that does happen. And there are times, like, I have a post like that once a week in my group. Add your post, do your thing, because your reader might be there and your reader might see it. However, the likelihood of somebody wanting your specific book's topic on someone else's post is low. And if you're doing it in the sense of like you both write about the same thing, that's even more sleazy. Please don't do that. Don't do that. Find your audience in the right space. If you need help with this, I have a YouTube video and a masterclass to teach you how to do that. And so I'll link those below as well, or link those in the description as well. And then preparing for ads. So let's say you want to run Amazon ads or Facebook ads or YouTube, whatever ads you're trying to run for your book. Be prepared for them. There are certain things you want to have in place before you start to run those ads, because you are going to run the risk of just spending a lot of money and wasting a lot of money because you don't have your page optimized or you don't have your page set up for people to want to buy. And so that's why I put these in this order, because auditing your Amazon first and really auditing your website and your social media are key as well. And those are services that I offer through Uncloned Marketing. And so if you need an audit for your website or your social media, then just comment audit and then I'll connect with you. But you want to have your page that you're sending people from the ad, having it set up in a way that it makes people want to buy. And if your page is not set up properly, then people are just going to leave the page and then you're going to waste money because the ad is trying to send folks continuously to that spot. And so I have a video that talks about, I believe it's 5 things that you need to have ready, 5 things you need to do before you set up your ads. And so that's something I definitely wanted to hit home on, because so many people think, oh, I can just run ads to it. Oh, I did this ad challenge and like it's just going to work now. There's certain things you need to have set up. Like you need to have certain things prepared. You need to have it where it's very clear to folks that what it is that they're buying, or if it's a sales page, you need to have it so it's easy to purchase and make it easy for people to buy from you by having things set up properly. And don't waste your money by not having that in place. Then the last thing, leverage your book. I've talked about this throughout this video, but using your book as the base, not the ending. So using it as a foundation, not the ceiling. Your book is just the beginning. There's so many different things you can do with your book that go beyond your book, and I'll give you some examples. Mentioned them earlier, but coaching. So for example, throughout this book, I mentioned my group coaching program. Throughout Profitable Publishing with Preorders, I need to actually say the name and not just keep saying this book. Throughout this, I mentioned my group coaching program, Pre-Order Profits, as well as my course that take you through the steps that I share here, because I understand that some people might want to have an extra touch point. Some people might want to sign up with me for a VIP day, for a Pre-Order Profits VIP day, to go through these steps, to do them together, or have me do some of the work for them. And that's fine, because one thing when I was teaching for over a decade, one thing that was really emphasized to us is that people learn differently. Kids learn differently. And just because you become a grown-up doesn't mean you suddenly learn the same way as everybody else. And so differentiated instruction, that was something that was hammered home. And people need different touch points. And so maybe somebody wants to work with you by just reading your book. And so not really work with you, but maybe somebody just needs to read your book and they're good. They can use the strategies. They're good to go. Maybe somebody said, okay, I need to work with you one-on-one. I want to pick your brain. I want you to actually do these steps for me because I'm too busy to do them. Okay, well then I would recommend that they sign up for a VIP day with me. And in particular, if they're focusing on pre-orders, then it would be my Pre-Order Profits VIP day. And so I say all that to say, don't just assume just because you've offered something in one way that it's going to work for everybody. Just because you've written the book doesn't mean that it's going to help everyone have that same transformation. Maybe people need an extra step. Maybe they need something that's closer proximity to you. I used to have kids who they would need to sit their desk right next to my desk because it helps them focus better. And so that was fine. Like they needed to be at table 1 right by me because they would get distracted by whatever would happen. Or they might get into a little tussle with somebody else and say, okay, you're going to sit right next to Miss Shepherd's desk. And that's fine. Everybody needs different things. And so providing those and using your book as a foundation to springboard those other ideas is awesome because there's limitless possibilities, but also you are reiterating the same points. So even though the structure is different, so like of course a VIP day versus a course versus a group accelerator, group coaching program with me versus reading the book are going to be different. There's different things that are offered. However, the foundation, the framework is the same. It's the same principles. So when somebody reads the book, for example, I have a client who her VIP day is next Friday. So right now part of her homework is to read a portion of the book, and I gave her certain sections. So to read a portion of the book because she's totally new to pre-orders. And so when we have our VIP day, she is going to have a stronger foundation because she's going to understand why I'm doing certain things I'm doing and why I'm having her doing certain things that she needs to do as a part of her pre-order process. And so it helps her because she's coming from a place of this is her first book that she's released, and she wanted to start out strong and make sure she could recuperate some of her income because she has other books she wants to release as well. And just in general, she's publishing can be expensive. And so she wants to make sure she's doing it right from the start to generate that income. And so when we work together, I can reference and tell her, hey, okay, well, we're going to work on your book bundle. So then I can say, okay, we talk about book bundles in this chapter and in this chapter. And so these are some ideas that we can pull from. These are some things that I think would work for your book. And then you're not starting from scratch. So essentially using your book as a point of leverage helps you to be able to deepen people's understanding of your frameworks and also what it is that you're trying to teach people in general. So I hope that makes sense. And as I mentioned before, drop your questions in the chat and I will come back and answer them. And so we'll do Q&A that way since this is pre-recorded. So we'll do Q&A that way. Drop your questions below. I will answer them. And then if you want support to create continuous sales for your book, then definitely scan the QR code here to either grab a copy of the book, because though it talks about pre-orders, I do have a section about strategies for ongoing sales. And then if you are someone who's like, I would rather us work together on this, either you are launching a new book and you need support to get it done, or you have an existing book that's not seeing the sales that you would like to see, or you want to revive an existing book, then scan the previous code or the first code for a VIP day with me. And I will let you know this is a 4-figure investment. However, it's because you're getting collapsed time. So you're getting the results faster. And also we are creating your launch assets together. So that way you can actually just hit the ground running with them. But if you're like, that's out of my ballpark, then the book is a great option and you can get it either in black and white or in color, like I mentioned earlier in this recording. So share this with an author who needs it and who needs to make continuous sales. And be sure to like and subscribe as well if you're watching on platforms that have that. So thanks so much and have a good one.